In this video, we're going to talk about all the bizarre deaths in the movie Final Destination, Bloodlines. So let me start by saying So don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. Iris Campbell. The first to meet a bizarre end in the movie is the grandmother of our protagonist, Stephanie, who's been having nightmares every day for the past 3 months about the death of several. Now only Iris and her family were left, but she was always careful. She isolated herself and built a fortress where she managed to live for decades. However, after explaining everything to her granddaughter, she realized she seemed like a parent. Howard Campbell. Now death goes after Iris's bloodline that was never supposed to exist, and the next to have a bizarre death is Howard Campbell, Iris's eldest son. So we can understand the order of deaths. They happen as follows. Iris, when she cheated death, was pregnant with Howard and later had Darlene. So Howard and his bloodline are the next to die, and then death goes after Darlene and her bloodline. Back to the film, Howard invites everyone and ends up putting it into a drink. Then a bottle falls on top of the pressure hose that powers the gardening tools. Meanwhile, Bob breaks the trampoline, which scares Julia, who drops the glass containing the shard that Bob broke earlier. Howard steps on the glass, cuts his foot, and falls to the ground. And the tools, which has started moving, fall onto the lawnmower, turning it on and finishing off Howard. Julia Campbell. After Howard dies, death starts going after his children. So Stephanie tries to warn Eric that he'd be next, since he's Howard's oldest son, followed by Julia and Bob. But something strange happens. The next person death targets isn't Eric, it's Julia Campbell. While out for a run, she gets hit in the head with a ball, falls into a trash bin, and ends up in the path of the garbage truck, suffering one of the worst fates in the movie. She gets crushed alive. But why didn't Eric die first? We find that out shortly after when his mother, played by our dear Tony Todd, who passed away in November 2024. William explains that there are only 2 ways to cheat death. The first is by taking someone else's life. That way you gain the remaining years they would have had, or by dying and coming back to life. Yes, one option is to die and then be resurrected. Since Bob is next on death's list, Eric tries to help him cheat death. At first, Darlene Campbell. With Howard's last son Bob now gone, death goes after Darlene and her bloodline. Stephanie comes up with the idea that they should all move into the place where her grandmother Iris had lived safely for decades. But I find this scene really strange. I watched the movie twice and still don't get why Iris chose Stephanie, who is still in the car, but Darlene doesn't die in the explosion. In fact, she manages to pull her son out from under the debris, and just when we think everything's fine, yep, a power pole falls on her, and death finishes off Darlene. Stephanie Reyes and Seth Campbell. Let's just say the last deaths weren't the most interesting ones in the movie. Seth manages to cut the seatbelt and pulls her out from underwater, but Stephanie seems to already be dead. So her brother tries to resuscitate her. And like William had said earlier, one of the ways to cheat death is by dying and coming back. And that's exactly what happened to Stephanie. Or so they thought. At the end of the movie, we find out first Stephanie, who's older, and then Seth. And that's how death ends Iris Campbell's entire bloodline in the movie Final Destination, Bloodlines. Tell us which bizarre movie you'd like to see here on the channel.